Okay, today I want to show you how to set up a new site-to-site connection using a Pro Custodibus connection wizard. So first of all, what is a site-to-site connection? Well, it's where we set up one host in one site, like host A and site A, with a WireGuard connection to connect to one host in site B, like host B and site B here. But we configure WireGuard to allow any host in site A to connect to any host in site B, so we can have a workstation in site A, like endpoint A here, have the user of this workstation use a web browser to connect through WireGuard over to a web server running on endpoint B in site B here. So we can do this WireGuard configuration all through the Pro Custodibus connection wizard. One thing that you may find you need to do additionally is that if, for example, host B isn't the LAN router for site B, you will need to configure the LAN router on site B to make sure that it routes the LAN network used by site A 192.168.1/24 through the LAN IP address of site B 192.168.202. But what Pro Custodibus connection wizard can do for you is set up the WireGuard side of things, and so that's what I want to show you now. So in the Pro Custodibus UI, we can set up a host record for host A here, and we're going to create a new WireGuard configuration to push to host A, and we're going to make this a site-to-site connection to host B. And so on the host A side, we'll create a new peer identity for host A and generate its public key pair. And on the host B side, we'll do the same, creating a peer identity for host B and generate its public key pair. And also we're going to create a host record for host B as well. And so once we've completed those things, we're done with step 2. We can go on to the next step, setting up the transport. So on the host A side, it's going to have a public IP address of 198.151.100.1, and it's going to expose a public WireGuard listen port 51.821. And on the host B side, it's going to have a public IP address of, say, 203.0.113.2 and a public listen port of 51.822. And so one thing to keep in mind is if you have a network firewall, you're going to want to make sure that you expose this public listen port for host A and the public listen port for host B. So that's sort of the external transport step. Now for the next step, the tunnel step, we're going to set up our private WireGuard network, and so we can generate a private network address space here. We'll use the 10/8 block. We'll choose a 24-bit mask here, and so we'll randomly generate 10.161.209/24 as our private WireGuard address space, and on the host A side we'll use .1 for the host B address, and we'll use .2 for the host B address. And so we'll route via host A its own private .1 address, as well as the site A LAN, which is 192.168.1. 24, and through host B we'll route its private WireGuard address as well as the site B land, which is 192.168.0/24. So that will be the configuration we need for the tunnel step. And then for the extra step, we're going to want to make sure that on both the host B side and the host A side and the host B side, we forward all connections through our WireGuard interface, allow all connections through that. And we're probably also going to want to enable MSS clamping on TCP connections that go through the WireGuard network to make sure that we don't have any MTU issues. So we'll use the defaults there and then click the next button, and our final step of the connection wizard is to review the configuration settings that we're going to use on both sides of the connection. And so we can see on the host A side we're going to use that .1 address for its private WireGuard address, and then for host A to connect to host B, it's going to use the public IP address and listen port of host B, and through that we're going to route from host A to host B the site B LAN network address, and correspondingly for our host B configuration we're going to use our private WireGuard address on host B.2, and it's going to connect to host A is going to use the public IP address for our host A and its public WireGuard listen port, and route through that are the site A LAN. So that all checks out. We'll save this configuration, and now to actually apply this to host A and to host B, we can do one of two things. We can set up the Pro Custodibus agent on host A, and that entails downloading the Pro Custodibus conf file and setup file for host A, as well as the Pro Custodibus agent, and copy that all over to host A and follow these instructions to run the install script on host A. And once we do that, that will set up the Pro Custodibus agent service running on host A, and that will automatically download the WireGuard configuration for host A to WireGuard A and apply it. Now, as our other option, we can go back and we can download the WireGuard configuration files manually. So for the host B side, we can download the WireGuard configuration for host B and apply that manually to host B. Or if, for example, host B is running some special router software, we could use this configuration file to figure out what specific fields we need to enter into our special router operating system that we have on host B. So that's how you can use the Pro Custodibus configuration connection wizard to set up the WireGuard configuration you need for a site-to-site connection.